Hello, everybody. Ben here. Just waiting for people to join at the beginning. But while we're waiting, I'm just showing you off what you can achieve with Clair.io's technology. And this is what I'm going to be showing off today on how to achieve this type of look with your models. I should say that we're very open to questions and requests during this webinar. So if there's like a specific model or a look that you're trying to achieve, like maybe share a link in the chat window and we can see what we can do. I'm not promising anything, but we will try and accommodate any requests. Also, we're very open to questions while we're going, so throw me your best questions and I'll see if I can answer them live here. So what I'm doing is I'm showing off demos from 3Kit. 3Kit is actually based on Clair.io, and I think that it's a pretty good showcase of what you can achieve. And I'm going to be showing you how you can achieve the same type of look, because all of these are just set up in Clair and then just embedded on the page. Some of them have pretty nice effects. Here's a velvet sofa. Here's like a packaging demo. I'll just quickly, while we're waiting again, it's always good not to immediately start into the heavy stuff while everyone's joining. So here's a velvet couch, and what's neat about this one, you'll actually notice it changes color based on your view angle, and that's what velvet does. And then we have some nice shadows on this. We have a nice reflection on the floor, and that features this product really nicely, and it's very performant on all devices, and it loads quickly. Here's a product demo for a box. This one is just a paper box here, but what you can do is I can show you how to do this one. You can set like aluminum foil on parts of it, and now you have it colored, but you have it reflective. Or we can say we wanted to have parts of it metallic and parts of it not. And I can show you how to achieve that as well. But again, based on your feedback in the chat window, I can focus where I'm talking about to meet your needs and your desires in this. I'll wait probably another 2 minutes, so I'll start about 5 minutes after. In the meantime, I'll be showing off a few more examples here. People tend to like this one. It's actually a very simple material setup. People like this one, which this one's a bit more complex. While this one looks really nice, this one actually is actually a photo capture of the shoe. So there's actually almost no real-time lighting happening here. All the sort of sheen at the top is not view dependent. It's actually in the texture. So this is mostly a pre-baked texture. It still looks really nice though. It is hard to relight objects when you've captured the texture using photos. So that's one of the limitations here. This one here, a lot of people like this one. I guess it's a fairly simple model, but it's got a lot of different types of plastics. Let me see if I can blow that up for you and maybe show you a bit more in detail. You can visit all of these by going to 3kit.com and you can have a look at these on your own web browser. But see, this one, we got an IBL, an image-based lighting setup here, and you can see it has really nice sheens in different parts of the model. It's got a lot of nice detail in the 3D model itself. We got some metallic there, different roughnesses on the sort of the rubber that's in the handles areas. It's different than the plastics up here. It's a little slow when I'm running it to full size on a 4K. Let me just get out of full screen here. There, and it's fast again. Today we're going to be covering sort of the basics and advanced features of Clair.io when you're using it for lighting scenes, when you want to achieve basically photorealistic results in real time on all devices. It's relatively straightforward. I'm going to start off by doing just a simple model and lighting that up with a few different materials. And then I'm going to show how you can apply that to a scene and then achieve the looks you're looking for. And we're going to go through shadows and IBL and a few other techniques in that sense. Okay, well, I guess we might as well get started. I'm going to share my screen again. I'm all going to be using the free account to set this up. It's quite simple. So the first thing I do is I log into Clara, and I just click New Scene, create an empty scene. I'm going to create an unlisted scene. But yeah, let's go back to here. And let's move this up. Move the sphere up. And the first thing we want to do is we want to add some materials. By default, there's no materials on this scene. And what I'd recommend using for the best quality results is I'd always recommend using something called physical materials. That's physical materials as in physically based rendering, PBR materials. And so you just click on the material library and you go new, and new physical. And then I'd recommend dragging and dropping it onto an object. That's the easiest way to set things up. And I'm going to set up a different material on the sphere than I am on the ground. So I'm going to just put this on the ground. I'm going to call this ground. Oops. All right. So double clicking on it lets you rename it. Ground, and we'll call the other one, I guess, target. Okay. Yeah, so the basics of materials in physically based rendering is you've got your base color, also known as albedo. You can just change it to whatever you want here. And then there's two other main parameters, roughness and metallic. And that mostly defines your whole object system. It's hard to understand roughness and metallic unless we set up a lighting scenario. So what I'd recommend is that we use something called an image-based light. You can look it up on Wikipedia if you want to know all the details of it. But image-based lighting is, it basically captures, someone goes into a real environment and sets up a shiny sphere. And then they take pictures of that shiny sphere as it's reflecting what's in the environment around it. And then what they've done is they've captured the incoming light. And this leads to a very rich lighting environment that's incredibly hard to replicate if you're just like putting in point lights and area lights. So what we Clara IO offers right out of the box is down in the bottom tab here is you have all your different HDR environments. These are high dynamic range environments, IBL maps. And what you can do is it's as simple as picking one to click on. If I want to do an outdoor lighting scenario, I could click maybe say on this one here. And then what it does is it automatically imports it into the scene and sets it up. So the environment map is here. Sorry, I think it's just uploading or something. Give it a moment. There we go. So the environment map is here. And you can see we've got our Pisa cube maps. And it's actually set into the base of the environment here. It's set as the environment map for the image-based lighting environment map. If I want to remove it, I would just click here to get rid of it, or I can select it back. Okay, now that I have that, when I change the material properties, it's going to be much more obvious what is happening because I have a rich lighting environment. What I might want to do as well is maybe just like add a point light or something, just give you a comparison. So we're going to put a point light over here. And again, we probably should default it to the default, but I recommend having physical fall off. Everything should be physical, and then you'll get much more realistic results. So let's go back to this object here. And now that I have a lighting environment, I can change the material properties and see that reflected in real time in a meaningful way. So I can change roughness. Sorry, let me just make the light a bit brighter here. Go. So I can change the metallicness of it. And then you can see here as well, I can then change the roughness. And then it becomes more or less blurry. Let me change the color so it's a bit brighter here. So you can see that I've got an environment and it's reflecting off the object. And so if I set it to fully metallic, I'm only getting the reflections of the environment. And if I set it down to zero metallic, I've got basically a diffuse material. It's not metallic at all. It's more like a plastic. And when I have it fully metallic, it's very easy to see me varying the roughness and seeing that effect. So when there's no roughness at all, it's perfectly smooth. It's like a smooth cylinder or smooth like polished ball bearing. And as I increase the roughness, it actually gets blurrier and blurrier. And what it's doing from a technical standpoint is it's basically integrating more and more of area of the incoming light together, sort of averaging it out. and the sort of the highest level is really completely average. And yeah, so that's basically the two main parameters for physically based materials. Now, when we want to create any arbitrary material, what I'd recommend, like let's say, like I'll show you how to create brand new materials. So one of the things you may want to do is just open up like a search engine and then type in what you're looking for. And a good one is basically like seamless wood texture. And so if I want to make a wood, I look for seamless because that means that I can repeat it effectively. And then you can find something. It's really good to go sort of in this fashion. And then maybe say you want a large image. And then you can pick a wood. If you want to find a leather, just replace this with leather. And you can find a leather material that way, or a fabric. Oops, sorry. I should have gone seamless leather, not leather wood. Seamless leather texture. When you are finding them this way, you do have to worry about copyrights and stuff. But if you're just doing it for personal use, it's not that big of a deal. Yeah, so why don't I set up a leather? These actually all seem sort of okay. I could start with, this one seems to have two different, a bump map and a colored image. Yeah, so let's bring those down. I can actually just save straight from here. I can save onto my desktop. Let's call this one a bump map, and I'll explain what that is as we start to use it. And I'll save the other one. We might be actually able to use the same one for both, but we'll start this way. We'll call it a color map. So to achieve different types of materials, what you really want to do is you want to, I'm being told that I should really increase my label size. By default, and I can actually zoom in just a bit. There, that might help people read. I'm going to hide the IBL maps for now. And that gives us a bit more space. So once you've got the textures you want to set up, usually what you do when you want to set up a specific material is you have to find sort of the surface variant color. That's your base map. And then, so let's put that on here. So this is the color of the leather that we brought in, that we found through Google there. And once we have that, it's actually a simple matter. We can go to our target object here, or the target material, and I'm going to actually get rid of the metallicness because leather is not metallic. And you just set that into your base image here. So we pull in our color. And there we go. So we have sort of a leather object. It's a little shiny. Leather usually isn't that shiny. So what we can do is we can change the roughness here. It's not quite as perceptible when it's not a metallic object because non-metallic objects just really don't shine that much. But yeah, I can reduce my roughness here. And then and then we can get rid of that highlight that we were seeing there. So now we've got a leather. It's not a horrible leather, but we can do better than this. What I'd recommend next is pulling in a bump map, and that's going to change sort of the light reflecting off it. Yes, so some people are asking about the configurator. That would be actually the next webinar. We'll explain how to take all the materials that we're setting up and the lighting, and then adding the configuration options to it. But this one, we separated them out because it's sort of, a lot of people want to know how to set up photorealistic objects. So yeah, so the next step here is I'm going to upload a bump map. And a bump map, what it does is it's mapped the same way as your color map, but what it does is its color variations represent sort of like a height field on top of your surface. And then it will cause the sort of the surface normal of the object to change its direction based on those that height field. And so it adds a lot of, I guess, small scale detail to your object, such as this texture. This leather actually has like it's a skin pattern, really. That's what leather is. It requires a lot of detail that is really hard to mesh well, or it would create a large download. So it's easier to represent that as a bump map. So all you do is you have your color map here. You come down here and you can add your bump map. Sec, I think I got that. Come back to here, go down the bump. There we go. And so it was sort of subtle here. I guess that's the problem with bump maps. They are somewhat subtle. Let me see if I can increase the shininess to see. It is there. So you can actually see it more in this Fresnel highlight, that it's now quite bumpy. If I was to get rid of the scale for the bump map, you'll notice that, whoops, if I go just to 0 instead of going negative, you'll see that it's gone away. And so if I want to bring that back, 1 is usually a very good value for bump maps. You'll see I've got that light playing a pattern on the surface. And it seems much more detailed and much more realistic than it would if I didn't have a bump map there. So that's basically how to set up bump maps. Normal maps you can use as well. One problem with normal maps is that they're usually a lot to download, whereas bump maps compress better. So you can get slightly higher quality with normal maps. They are a little bit harder to generate, and they do take a bit longer to download. There really is no runtime performance differences when you use normal maps. If you use bump maps, though it is more to download. So from a scene startup time, there is a cost to be paid for that, but not really runtime performance. Just to answer Daniel's question right there. Okay, and just to see the effect of this, if I make this metallic, it'll actually be, you can see quite, the bump map has a massive effect on that. Sometimes people give you bump maps that are inverted. Just simply set the negative sign, and then it'll flip the direction of it. And yeah, just to show you the full effect, if I come down to 0, yeah, it really changes it. Okay, let's set up another material, and I'm going to do it the same way that I'd recommend like you doing it from first principles. Let's set up a fabric. Fabrics are a bit more interesting than leather. So let's go, I don't know, sometimes just pick a random fabric and set that up. What do you think? I do need a seamless one. The white one allows me to recolor it. So I'm going to go with this one here. I also think this will actually make a good bump map. Sometimes if you can get a color or a map that is very white and black, it can double as a bump map, and that reduces your download size too. So let's save this image, and we'll call this fabric base or fabric color. It's not a bad idea to name your maps based on the role that they're playing. So we'll come back to here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a whole new material here. We'll call this fabric. And again, I'm going to pick the fabric. Let's see. Oh, I didn't drag it in. It's my fault. There we go. Let's see. You know, if you're wondering what your things look like, you can always click on them, and I'll show you a preview in the side. So come back to fabric. Bring in fabric color. Yeah, that's the right bump map. You know, it's not really that great of an object, though. I don't like how it stretches so much. It's quite obvious. Maybe I'll just put a cube or something in here instead. And we'll just assign that to cube. Let's see. That looks a bit more. It's not so badly stretched. Now hide the sphere. Cool. Okay. Right away, though, I don't like the look of it. It seems not fabric-y. It just seems like it's too shiny. So fabric actually is always incredibly rough. As well, let's make this a bit brighter. Let's move this light up a little bit. Oops, let's zoom out a bit. I'm going to move in 2 planes at once here. The other thing that I don't, so I'm going to also make it a bit more multi-dimensional by adding itself the same color map as the bump map. And that does make it a bit more interesting. Just compare without it. Let's see if it does actually look different. It's a bit different. And I think the next thing I want to do is sort of actually do what fabrics do in real life, is they actually often change color based on the direction. And we can simulate that. So let's say this was actually sort of a pink color. What happens to fabric in real life? And actually, I'm going to use mostly the environment map to do that. I'm going to boost up the intensity of the environment map. Yeah, there we go. Fabric does change color when you look at it at an oblique angle. And the reason that it does that is that fabric has sort of loose hairs. And those reflect the light when you're sort of at a grazing angle and not sort of like the base of the fabric. So like they sort of have like, so they have a grazing angle, a color change, and we support that. Actually, I am going to go back to the sphere because the box is a little bit not realistic for fabric. Okay, so let's set that up. So the way that you set that up, the grazing angles, is you actually set up something called fall off. And Clara supports fall off. And what fall off is it's basically at an oblique angle, we can change a bunch of different parameters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change I'm going to use actually the same color map, but I'm not going to have it tinted white or tinted pink. I'm going to have it tinted white. This is a bit extreme, but what you'll notice, let's see if I can make this a bit clearer. Let's get a better environment map that's a bit more consistent. And let's make my main color a little bit stronger. There we go. So that's actually showing you how the fall off works. This one's a little bit too extreme, but just playing with the parameters a bit, you can get something a bit better. So what happens is when it's facing me directly, I see the color that's its base color. But as it moves towards more of an oblique angle, or a normal that is perpendicular to my view angle, it then takes on the color that you set as the fall off. And we can maybe adjust that a little bit more, maybe a bit less pink, but a little bit less pink. Something like that. That's actually very similar to the thing I set up on 3Kit. The sofa there. And I might be able to bring that scene up. But that's actually how you set up most fabrics. Most fabrics should have a fall off that is a bit more whitish than the base color. Someone asked about zooming in and out. It's actually quite, so what I usually do, I use the default settings for Clara. We do have a few alternative navigation styles. I'm actually not good with those. So we use the navigation style Clara IO. If you switch it to something else, everything I say does not apply. But yeah, I use the middle mouse button, I hold down to rotate. To pan, I hold down the middle mouse button and control. And I'm actually scrolling the mouse wheel to zoom most of the time. And if I want to zoom without a mouse button, I hold down Control and Alt, and then I have this mode. So Control and Alt, and the left mouse button is zoom. It's also the scroll wheel. Does that help? Anyways, so that's basically fabric. I think the other one, why don't we set up gold? So there's a lot of people that have to like set up steel or gold for jewelry or other types of like engineered objects. So I'll do that next. Let's just drag this on. They're actually super easy. I sort of showed how to do them earlier. You basically put a physical material on. You set its metalness to 1. And you set how shiny your material is based on its roughness. So shiny or less shiny. I would say nothing's really perfectly shiny unless it's a mirror. What I would recommend more is something like a 0.2 or something like that, or a 0.3. And then it's basically the base color that you set to set the different materials. Steel is not super bright. Steel or iron, they're sort of darker base colors. So like an iron is somewhere down here. I would say stainless steel is a pretty bright one, or silver, or up higher. And gold is actually really, really simple. It's just a very whitish yellow. So whitish, yellow, here you come into somewhere around there, and you've basically set up a gold object. It doesn't look very interesting like this one, but maybe I can put it on like something else. And there you go, there's sort of your gold object. This one needs a bit more faces for sure, but 20 and maybe 60. Yeah, so that's, and if you want to do like a richer gold, this might be a gold alloy. You just come in here and you set maybe a little bit more yellow. You don't want to go too much, that's sort of looking fake again. Somewhere sort of in this range. I guess richer, maybe a bit darker. And copper is very, very similar to that. I can just lower that. Copper is basically just more orange. It's very, very simple. It's like it doesn't become really much more simple than that. So copper, probably around there. So again, metals is fully metallic, some middle range on the roughness, and a base color. And what's really cool, if you want to make this sort of aged, because this sort of looks a bit too perfect, and that's where you get the feeling that, hey, wait, this is computer graphics. What you can find is you can find a seamless like scratch texture or something like that. And then you can put that on the object, and I'll show you how to do that. And it really can make it look way, way more realistic. So again, I'm just finding random textures. You got to worry about licensing when you're doing this. Scratch. I'll show you how to set this one up. There's two things we're going to do to make it look pretty awesome. And again, you'll be surprised at how simple all of this is. So I'm going to bring back the sphere. We're going to grab this scratch texture, and now that I've downloaded, I just drag it in again. Give it a moment, it's going to add into here. And then we're going to come back to the physical material. I'm actually not going to add it to the base color. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add it to the roughness. Because when metal gets scratched, it actually doesn't change its physical properties in terms of how it reflects. Like it's not becoming a plastic, it's not becoming less metal, but it actually changes how shiny it is. And let's see if I can make sure that works. There. So now I've broken up that perfect exterior with a little bit of scratches, and you can change that, how scratchy it is. So what happens, the way that I've added that as an image here on the roughness, before I added this, I was just changing that one parameter, but if I put a map in there, it multiplies the value in the map by that roughness value. So yeah, and the other thing that's with roughness is it's often a little bumpy. So if I modulate the bump a little bit with that, it'll really, really help. That's too much. But something a bit more subtle, because like really, it's not really that bumpy. Something like that. I sort of got a really good metal now. And this would look great on like a teapot or like some type of copper that I was selling, like a copper teapot, that kind of stuff. If I was making some gold bars, something more in the realm of this color would be sort of for the gold. I have to make the interface bigger. I can do that. There we go. Hopefully that helps. Okay, so someone did ask about multi-materials. Yes, it's actually, we support multi-materials quite well. So you can import them through FBX. We have a really good FBX importer. It automatically converts to physically based materials. The other thing that you can do is you can create them. I'm sure you guys are somewhat familiar that Clara has some modeling tools. You select an object, you go into some modeling, and I'm not going to actually model anything today. I'm going to select a bunch of faces. So I've selected about half the sphere. And what you do if you want to set up multi-materials in Clara, it's really easy. You just come down to this multi-material thing when you're in face mode. And by default, everything is, I believe it's multi-material 0. I'm going to add multi-material 1. and I'm going to set that. Okay, it didn't do anything yet. The reason why it didn't do anything is we only pay attention to multi-material IDs when there's a multi-material ID on, or multi-material on that object. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set that up. So you come over here, you come to your material library, and you go multi-ID. Okay, and come down here, and we just drag that on. Oh, sorry, I don't think I dragged that properly. There we go. Okay, very boring. So we have to actually assign some materials to the slots. So I think I put a fabric, and I can put, I guess, what was the last one? It was called physical. It was really gold. But there you go. There's multi-materials. Yeah, it just works. Let me just change this one. I guess I'm calling it metal now, or metal gold. Okay, let's see. I could do car paint next. That's a very interesting one. And I think that it is a very interesting one, and it's going to show you something else that we support. Okay, so we're going to create physical material. We're going to drag that on. If I drag it on, it's going to replace the multi-material. So for car paint, it's actually a two-layered material. It's sort of metallic with metal flakes. So usually I would look up something like a flake texture. See if we've, oh, these are not great. This might work. What else do we have? It's like metallic flake, seamless metallic flake. Okay, another thing I can look for, I think I've done this before just using a noise texture, because that's what metallic flakes are generally. So let's do that. Let's find a subtle noise. This one looks pretty subtle. Let's go with that one. Clair.io does have a bunch of capabilities for adjusting the range of a texture once you've downloaded it, or once you put it into Clair, and I can show you that as well if this one's a bit too extreme, because we don't want extreme variations in sort of the texture here. But okay, so I got my noise. I'm going to drag it in. We're going to call this car paint. I'm going to, oh, I've already put it on here. And yeah, so let's do, I think a red car paint might look cool. So let's pick a red here. It looks very much not like car paint. Car paint varies its metalness. So I can actually pull in the, did I get the noise in here? I'm sort of missing it. PQ. Oh, maybe there is sort of an update bug right now. You sometimes have to click off an object and then back onto it to get it to display the textures. There we go. Oops, I didn't want to put that in that channel. And because it multiplies it, we're not seeing an effect because we're multiplying it by 0. There, oh, that's nice. Okay, so that's the first part of a car paint shader. The second part is it actually is pretty shiny. Well, actually, no, the base color isn't super shiny. That's getting there. A little bit too much. But basically, we put a noise in the metallic. I think we could also put a noise in the roughness. We can try that. And then maybe get rid of the noise in this channel. It's probably best to, I do like it in that channel. So what I'm basically, by putting it in the metallic channel, what I'm doing is I'm basically saying there's a bunch of flecks in that paint where it's no longer paint, it's actually metal. And then it shines through that. I'm going to lower the roughness again. And there we go. So that's the first part of a car paint. The second part of a car paint is not only is there metallic flecks in it, there's actually a clear coat on top that is reflective. And it's clear. And we actually have that here called clear coat. And then what you want to do is you want to make a clear coat. Even if you make it 1, it doesn't actually become a full clear coat. It's just 0 to 1 is sort of like a reasonable range. And this is sort of getting to a car paint range. I might want to make it a bit more shiny for a new car. Let's see. I want the underlying one to be a bit rough, and then the top one to be not quite as rough. The speckle or the metallic flakes are a bit too gross scale because you don't really see the flakes in a car. They're much more small. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to that image, and for this specific image, I'm going to change the UV tiling to be a bit more frequent. So you just come here and you say, oh, I want to tile it by 3 times. And then tile this direction by 3 times. And then now it's a much smaller scale detail. It is still a bit extreme, I'm finding. I sort of knew this when I pulled in the texture. It has really bright and then gets really dark. And that's really not how metallic flakes are. So what I can do is I can actually adjust its range as well through this point here. And I can actually reduce its range by going into the gain and saying, actually, I want to reduce your range to 1/25th or 25% of what it used to be. And then I can change where that is located sort of in space in the color range there. I don't know if that's any better. I might want it maybe 50%. It's not horrible. Again, back to the material here. There you go. So this is sort of getting into the realm of a car paint. It's still a bit too much though. That's probably around the right range. So that's where you have a metallic fleck paint underneath, and then you have a clear coat on top. So yeah, let's see. The other ones, I guess, are plastic. You can see that actually my process is a little bit exploratory on these types of things. And I do encourage that because then you'll have more of an intuitive understanding of how to create materials. Plastics are super easy. I guess they're not that interesting. So I maybe should skip over it pretty quickly. And then I maybe should make a wood because wood is actually one of the ones that are very similar to car paint. So plastic is super easy. Plastic has no metallic. It has a base color. And actually, some plastics have clear coats on them, so you can increase the clear coat. If it's a shiny plastic, say, some laptops are very shiny. You can consider them to have a clear coat on them. And then some plastics don't have sort of that white reflective layer. And so then you should remove that clear coat and you'll have more of a flat plastic. That's basically plastics. They're very, very simple. Let me just do a wood, because the woods can look very, very nice. Let's find, yeah, wood. Seamless wood texture. I guess I can do a floor. Floors are easy and they tend to look quite nice. Here's one. I'm going to save it again as an image. This one I'm picking because it has sort of the darkness in the right spots. It's also going to double as a bump map. Okay, so I've got that. I'm going to do it on the floor this time. Let's keep the metal gold there. Let's keep this interesting. I'm going to create a wood. And then I think after this material, I'm going to switch and I'm going to do some lights because I think that a lot of people did want some lighting information. Floor. Back to here. We're going to pick the base color. Will be that's where it had that update bug and it wasn't showing up right away. It's a bit annoying. Didn't I get? Oh no, it wasn't actually. It was just at the bottom. Did I not assign that? I don't think I assigned it. There we go. So that's wood. Again, it looks very flat. So the first thing I would recommend is adding a bump, using the same image in this case as the bump map. It's very diffuse, so I can make it a little bit rough, but I don't think it's going to matter that much. I guess next, that's not horrible. Um, but I guess next, you can actually vary the roughness based on the wood map as well, or you can find something else that sort of maps it very closely. But that can actually add a lot of sort of detail to it. Let's see if that can work. Uh, let's I guess that's more if it was metallic. Let me just remove that. In this case, I'm going to add a clear coat. So what I was sort of talking about with the car paint. So one thing when I add a clear coat, I'm basically adding a lot of floors have uh, like a shellac. Also with wood furniture, they often have a shellac on top as well. And it adds a richness to that object. Because what it does is when you add a clear coat, it actually makes the underlying wood darker. And once we do that, we can see that the normals are affecting the wood floor here. So there you go. That's sort of a wood floor. And if I wanted to make wood furniture, I might want to pull in something that's much more dark and then add that type of clear coat to it. Let me see if that's nice. Let's save the link. Oh, sorry. Save the image. And we'll call this wood dark. Pull that in. Okay. We'll pull in that the wood dark here. And we'll get rid of the normal map or the bump map there because it's not really useful in this case. And what I would do is if I was making very expensive furniture that has a really good clear coat on it, I would change the roughness of the clear coat and I'd bring that down. And then you can see here I've sort of got a really good clear coat on top of the underlying wood. You might want to put a slight bump, and I'd use the same underlying material. If it's expensive furniture, it's really not going to have a very strong bump, so I'd bring that down. Because the clear coat really removes a lot of the imperfections in that material. So yeah, and actually, as Kiefer said, I should scale the wood down and look a little bit nicer. So I'll just change the tiling on that. And there we go. Okay, so now I'm going to switch over and I'm going to do some lighting effects. One thing I should mention though is you can always view these in the editor and you can view them in the viewer. And I should be clear, there's actually two versions of the viewer. There's actually the V1 viewer, which is equivalent to the editor, and there's a V2, because we're currently developing sort of a replacement for Claire.io. Has the same capabilities, just a new code base that's more efficient. So I'm going to show you what it looks like in the V1 viewer. And you can see that's exactly what the editor looked like. And then it looks nearly identical in the V2, even though it's a completely different code base. The V2 viewer is actually what we use on 3Kit. It is a more capable technology. And so I would recommend if you're doing any publishing of Claire.io scenes, you do use the V2 technology. And to find out how to do that, it's Claire.io /docs is really where you want to go to find out how to use that V2 technology. Okay, so let's jump back to here and let's set up some lighting. It's very easy again. You just use these icons right up here. So I'd recommend like directional lights and point lights are usually what are really good. They're quite performant on all devices, and that's usually a concern. So it's quite simple. Set it up again. I always recommend physical fall off, like intensity of 10, and you can enable shadows. Shadows. Sorry. Point lights actually should have gone with a spotlight. There we go. You can see I have a shadow right away. You can enable this in the V2 player. You can even do auto shadows and set up your near and far automatically if you're in the right sort of realm. And yeah, and then we can just go to V2, view that. The V2 viewer and the V1 viewer don't automatically update as you change your scene. Let's see. What's happening here? Let's try to turn it off. Should have given me a shadow there if I had set this up all properly. Interesting. I think, oh, it just might not have been, oh, there is a difference actually. The shadow, it wasn't bright enough. There's actually a more accurate shadow calculation in V2, and that's sort of what I got caught up with. That's one of the, we're making everything more accurate in V2, and we're trying to get almost all of that working in V1 so that the transition period is very smooth. But that's one of the things that isn't as fully accurate. In V1, shadows are actually just dark, even if there's light coming onto that point, whereas we actually calculate shadows correctly in V2 in that the IBL is actually everywhere here, and the physical, it wasn't a physical light. So I just had to make it brighter, and I had to turn on, it had physical fall off on, right? No, I didn't, that's why. There we go. There we go, so there's your shadow. And while we still have the IBL being correct in that sense. And we can set up multiple lights. It's relatively straightforward. One of the easiest ways to set up multiple lights is once you have one, you just clone it, move it around. I could just refresh them. And what's nice in V1, you'll notice the shadows are not that accurate. It's really not bright enough in these areas, and it doesn't really get dark enough in these areas. But in V2, it's actually much more accurate in terms of its lighting equations. We can see here that they're a bit jaggy. You can just fix that very easily. Just change your map size. I wouldn't go too high, but 1024 really is nice. And interestingly, we are going to have we're going to have percent closer soft shadows going live later this week. And that's shadows where they get less sharp as you get further away from the object. Let me just change that, and we'll see if we can get rid of the jaggies by increasing the shadow map resolution. I do recommend, when possible, use auto shadow. It's just easier to set up. It sort of sets your near and far planes automatically for you. And so that's much cleaner in terms of the shadow. I could lower maybe the darkness of the floor, and then it'll be a bit more clear, or it won't be so overwhelming in terms of the bright colors. Or actually, I could lower the intensity of the environment IBL map. Lower that down to, like, say, 3.5, and then it's going to be much more dependent on the lights in the scene. The other thing that you can do, if you want to get, the percent closer soft shadows is quite nice. That's coming later this week. We also support a bunch of post effects that can add effects to your scene. So right now we have very brightness here, a very bright reflection here. I can come down to this player, and I can turn on bloom. And bloom can add quite a bit of pop to your scene. I'm just going to set the bloom range to only above 0.95 intensity, and then I can turn that on here. And what you're going to see is you're going to sort of see it glow now. So here you're actually going to see on the wood, it's actually getting white, because it's sort of simulating with CCD pixels in a camera or CCD sensor, sort of when you overwhelm one sensor, it overwhelms the sensors nearby to it. And that's sort of where you get this bloom effect. You can see that it's blooming over. So that adds a realism, and it makes things feel shinier when you do it that way. We also have a depth of field effect, and we can set up reflective floor. How would I do that really quickly? I find I don't really set up that many floors when I'm showing off products. I really set up a lot of reflective floors. Because it's sort of, if you see an Apple commercial, if you're looking at like an iPhone in a commercial, almost always it's just basically by itself, and it's trying to keep the focus on the object. So what they do is they put a reflective floor in there. It's quite simple with Clara. We actually have a special tool for that. You just go reflective floor. You say how wide it is. In this case, maybe 5 width won't be enough. And you can say how shiny it is. I can say it's maybe 0.2 metallic is a good one. And then it'll actually do a correct Fresnel equation. The only problem with that is true Fresnel is too reflective at an edge. I'll show you what I mean. Let's see if this works. Just come back to here. I want to refresh. So there we go. And so now I've got a reflection on the floor. The problem with this, the current settings I have though, is it gets more and more reflective as you come to sort of a grazing angle, which is what surfaces do in real life. The problem that leads to is this pop. Because often you want to be able to go underneath an object. So what we did is we actually have an option here. Maybe we should make it the default. You can actually set the Fresnel strength to negative. It actually does a non-physical calculation now on the mirror. But it leads to much better sort of presentation of objects. So what's going to happen now is as I come to a grazing angle, whoops, I think that might not have saved yet. Let's do it again. Now when I come up, yes, that was just a sync. It actually gets more reflective as I look down on it. It actually gets less reflective as I come towards a grazing angle. And what that does is now I don't get that pop. And it looks much more professional when I'm featuring an object on a web page. It looks much nicer. And if I want to make it more reflective, I can just change my metallicness up. If I want it really reflective, but still having that Fresnel effect, metalness of 1 here. And so now it's perfectly reflective when you're looking at it head on, and then it gets less as you come up. So that's some of the post effects there. And let's see. If I wanted to make this for a scene to show it off, I often used filmic tone mapping. You can read up on that on Wikipedia, but filmic 1.1 often looks quite nice. The other things that I might do is I might want this object to spin around and sort of showcase itself. To show that, I want to use a non-symmetric object. It'll be a little bit easier to show. It's spinning. So here's an object. We'll move it up just a slight bit. Oops, sorry, wrong selection. A slight bit above the floor. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set that as in the player. I'm going to say that I would like this to auto-rotate. And then I'm going to say what node I'd like it to auto-rotate. Sorry. Oh, I have to set a null. Let me set a null for this. Group width, a null. Okay. Go back to here. There. So I want it to rotate that node. I'm going to have it rotate clockwise, and I'm going to have it rotate once every 12 seconds. And then when I come back to here, and I refresh, or if I was to embed this in any page, there we go. And so then we got the reflective floor, we got auto-rotating with shadows, with physical-based materials. I would just say that this metallic scratch texture isn't working that well in this object. It's being stretched a little bit too much along the torus there.
Also supporting directional lights, and in that case, you're going to be able to set your spread angle.
And actually, yeah, I should also mention there's going to be another webinar next week on how to take these scenes that you've set up and then set them up in configurators. That's going to be on Thursday at noon Eastern time. You'll have to adjust for your time zone there. We're going to be sending out another email blast about that. So is there any way to set up your materials in a library? Bruce, yes, you're absolutely correct. There is a way to do that, and it's not super challenging. Anybody can create a material library in Clara.io, and it's very simple. All you do is you go new scene, create an empty scene, and then you come and you make your scene here. And what I usually do is I put a sphere in, because I want to see what it looks like. I might put an IVL map or something so I can see what that looks like. And then I make one physical material. So let's say I'm going to try and do this really quick. So let's say I've got a red metal. Not really physical, but I don't really know what metal object is. Metal, what is red metal? But we've got that. Now the trick with this, it's a little tricky, is you have to make sure that this object, this material is your first one in the material library. Okay, and you might want to call it something useful, like instead of physical, maybe we can call it red flame metal. And I'm going to call this scene red flame metal. It doesn't actually have to be the same name, but I want to have a useful name, red flame metal. Okay, so I've set up my material scene now. So what I'm going to come back to is I want to go back. So the way that you change, you create material libraries is you have to create a collection. And you can create a new collection. It's very simple. I'm going to call this Ben's material library. So what I want to do is I want to add this scene both to the collection and I want to change its document type. By default, all documents in Clair.io are scenes, but there's actually two other different types of materials, or documents. You can actually have them as materials. And what this does is it changes a few things with that scene. It will, the most important though, is it allows you to use it as a material library. So to see the material library, you do have to refresh because we only load the material libraries at editor startup at this time. But you'll see now I've got this collection. I actually got Ben's material library. And it has one material. And it's actually quite simple. I can have an object selected here and click on this. And now I've pulled that in. So it's incredibly simple to make collaborative create material libraries that you can then apply either in the editor, but if you look at our docs, you can use these material libraries also in your live configurators. Let me show you one other thing you can do with these types of collections. The other thing you can do with collections is if you click on it, you can actually share it with all your friends. So you can have one set of documents you're all contributing to. And you don't have to share each individual one. So it's great for collaboration. The other thing that they can do, I'm going to do this really, really quick because really we're sort of into overtime now, is I'm going to go Ben's cool model. Ben's cool model. So let's say I made a really cool model. Like, let's say I'm doing a lot of living rooms and I want to set I've got a couch and I really like this couch and I want to have other people be able to pull this couch into their scenes. So let's say this is my couch or sofa. This is my sofa scene. It's not really a sofa scene, but let's say it's got some materials. So we got this cool material on it that is, I don't know, some blue, and it's got this fall off. There we go. So I got my fabric, my fancy fabric, as I described earlier. This is my cool model. Okay, well, I come back to my scene listing. Which I get from Clair.io, I can say that this is part of Ben's material library, and its document is a model. And let me now that I'm calling it's not a material library anymore. It's actually Ben's assets. Let's call it, and come into a new scene. Create a new scene. Ben's assets. Oh, did I get that all right? Let me make sure I get that all right. Oh, right, that's right. Sorry, I was looking under material library. The same thing, if you want to get models, it's actually under Ben's assets, and there's my cool model. So if I want to bring that into the scene, I just click it, and there I go. I want another one, click it, there I go. And so now I've got my asset, and I can position my asset and share that among many different scenes. And it's just using collections and just changing the material or changing the document types. So I think that might be it for now, unless there's any more questions. Because I can keep talking if there is questions. from anybody. And we do work really well with FBX imports, OBJ imports. I also should mention that we have a really good step importer. So if you're working with CAD objects, you can import them via our step importer, and it'll automatically optimize the meshes. It will create UVs. Yeah, it does a lot, and I'd say that it's quite usable to create configurators right from that starting point. Some of the models on 3Kit are created from step files, such as the workbench here. So this is what we'll be covering in the next webinar, is how to set up these types of setups. And you can see that even when I change this option, it actually, not only does it change the model, but it actually changes the lighting setup. And that's because we have the lights also being turned on and off. I guess, Bill, one way that you can do soft shadows is you can actually have do SAO. The other things that you can do is you can have multiple lights, and also the percent closer soft shadows that we're introducing in the next week. All three of those. The last thing you can do is if your furniture isn't dynamic, you can pre-calculate some lighting and then import that as AO maps. We also support baked light maps as well. I didn't go into those workflows. It's a little involved. This one is not fully soft shadows, but you can see that it does get darker because we have multiple different shadows overlapping. Cool. I think we're running out of questions. Thanks for all joining us on this.